Good morning, everyone. I know that we still have some folks joining, but we're going to go ahead and be very mindful of your time and get our presentation started. Let me first start by introducing myself. My name is Lizette Ridgway. I'm the Director of School Improvement at the Texas Education Agency. Joining me today will be Alice Keller. She is our grant specialist within our division. And we both want to say thank you so much for taking the time today to be a part of our webinar, for showing us the patience in the change in the link. We had received several emails with interest in participating, and we knew that we would be over our threshold. So we have added additional capacity. So a huge thank you to all of you. Before we kick it off, I want to say that this grant is on a very tight timeline. And the reason it is so is because it came directly from requests from the field to see if there are additional funds available for next year, if we could expand our support of campuses kind of beyond the traditional scope of who we normally are able to provide support around. And so we really wanted you all to kind of open your face this grant opportunity with kind of fresh eyes. It is an opportunity for us to serve several different campuses that we've worked in the past, and to try to get at kind of to address some of the learning loss, to strengthen some of the systems, to help our educators be prepared for next school year, to kind of get past some of the challenges that we have faced this year. So with that, let's go ahead and move into our agenda for our presentation today. I want to touch on just some virtual norms. We do have a large participation group today, so I'm going to touch on that. We're going to spend a small amount of time just providing you with an overview of the grant, some background information, so that you all are aware of what are the various pathways, what are the requirements of those pathways, what are the funding amounts that are going to be available prior to the application actually being posted. So we will cover the timeline as well as the parts of the application so that you can go back and view this presentation once that grant opportunity is posted on our website. We will be posting this recording. We will be posting the slides that we're going to be using today for this recording. And we're going to be posting the updated FAQ. So I see many of you all already utilizing the chat. Thank you. We also have a Q&A feature on this webinar. Please use this as well. But we will try to address as many questions as we can while we are being recorded and while we have you on the line. Anything that we don't address, we will include in our FAQ, as well as the questions that we addressed in this recording. We will add them so that you all are able to reference it once that application is open and you're actually engaging in the application process. So let's go ahead and jump on in. Here is our virtual norms. As I just stated, please utilize the Q&A function. That is probably the best way for us to, if it's content related, for us to kind of keep track of the questions that we've already addressed. If you would feel comfortable with us reaching out, if there is a question that we feel like we would probably need more information of, it would be very helpful if you would actually rename yourself so that we can actually tie a question back to a particular individual. And so I provided an example there of how you can rename yourself so that if you know that you're asking a question that will likely not be addressed in this webinar, we can reach out for some additional information. So the 2021-2023 ESF Focused Support Grant is going to be available to Title I served 2020 federally identified campuses. In the past, we have been able to historically provide grant opportunities for comprehensive support and improvement schools only. This particular grant opportunity is expanding the universe of eligible campuses and will include both comprehensive support and improvement, additional targeted support and improvement, and targeted support and improvement. And it is considered an LOI competition, meaning that application is a letter of interest saying that the district has campuses that are interested in pursuing this grant opportunity, and therefore they will engage in an application review process to determine who of those applications will actually receive a grant award. This grant award is a 2-year grant cycle, so it will run through school years 21-22 and 22-23. And so the allotments will be dependent on the number of campuses that are awarded, and it will be one single notice of grant award that will be sent out to the district that will then be kind of allotted to the campuses that have actually received the award. That's a really important distinction, because even though it's campuses that are really the ones that are going to be pursuing a pathway, the application is being rolled up to one single district application. And that is really to reduce the duplication of effort within a school system, and to also kind of provide for the timeline that we are kind of faced with. So we want to ensure that we get these NOGAs out early in next school year. And so we're going to be, we're being very mindful of, in order to provide those funds to be utilized early enough in the year, then we needed to have this competition begin this spring. So what is the grant purpose? So the grant purpose is really is to cover several different goals. We want to first support the applicant in continuing any school level improvement efforts. And I think the distinction that I want to make here is, when you think about school level improvement efforts, we are not talking about intervention requirements. We are really truly talking about the continuous improvement cycle that every campus in the state engages in. So being able to allow the campus to identify where are their needs, where can we utilize kind of the aligned supports that are located kind of throughout the state at our service centers through some vetted improvement programs to continue the work that we feel is most necessary at this time. We want to continue to build capacity and awareness of the supports that are available through the Effective Schools framework. And we want to ensure that campuses are able to focus on strengthening their campus systems, which would be the most beneficial to campus leaders, to campus teachers, as they're addressing kind of the needs of the students for the upcoming school year. The general requirements would be, and kind of the district's role in this grant would be, that the applicant, so the district, is going to be responsible for assisting the awarded schools or the awarded campuses in all aspects of the Effective Schools Framework continuous improvement process. This graphic is just really to represent at a high level what's going to, what are the things that need to occur. So the campuses will identify their needs, and I'm going to talk a little bit about kind of how they're going to go about assessing those needs. They're going to look to start engaging with a partner as they're planning for next school year, and then they'll use the next 2 years to really start to implement some of the learnings from the different pathways, and really being able to execute on the action plans and the improvement plans that they've built to address those campus systems for improved student outcomes. Just a high-level overview of our performance measures for this grant. And again, in the program guidelines, once the application is posted, you're going to see much more detail, much more information. But at a high level, what is going to be required as a part of this Effective Schools Framework focused support grant? The first piece is that it does need to be the identification of one campus grant project contact. This could be a principal. This could be a member of the leadership team. This could be somebody at the district level, somebody like the district coordinator for school improvement, but that is going to be the person that's really going to serve as kind of the shepherd for this particular grant, for the connections to kind of the capacity building partners through the pathways for this particular campus. The next piece is participation in an ESF diagnostic. Because this is open to comprehensive campuses, we know that many of our comprehensive campuses already have engaged in an ESF diagnostic. So this ESF diagnostic would not be required if a campus has already had one in the past 3 years. For our additional targeted schools, If the campus had a state accountability rating that required an ESF diagnostic, again, that if they've already had one, they would not be required to engage in this. But that is going to be something that's going to be open to all grant recipients if they, even if they've already had one in the past 3 years, maybe significant changes have occurred within the leadership team, or they would like to have a better pulse on where they are in regards to progress. This ESF diagnostic, for those that have had one and would like a new one, or for those that have not had one and are going to be required to engage in one, that cost will be covered. It will not come out of your grant allotment. It is going to be covered as kind of the support that's going to be given for grant implementation to those schools. The ESF self-assessment is going to be posted with the application. For those schools that are going to need an ESF diagnostic, you are not going to be as familiar with the ESF framework. You might need some help identifying which pathway, which specific vetted improvement program within the pathways is a best fit for you. So that ESF self-assessment is what you can use as you're engaging in the application to narrow your focus on identifying a partner for that work. And so that self-assessment will be done as part of the application process if you've not engaged in it before. Once you have kind of been awarded the grant, you are working with someone within a vetted improvement program for each pathway, then you're going to have access to a web-based improvement plan that's going to be ESF aligned. This is going to be how you're going to plan for the coming year, how you're going to be assessing the progress that you're making along the way, and really being able to identify the goals that you are striving to achieve for next school year. And so this is a web-based platform that has been developed this past year that will provide a lot of support in your planning and progress for the coming year. The second to last bullet is really around the participation in the ESF aligned required trainings. The trainings that I am referencing here is the trainings that are required for the pathway that you choose. And so we're going to get into that a little bit in the next couple of slides, but this is really the support that you are applying for in this grant. So that is the ESF aligned required trainings. And then the last piece is knowing that there is a grant amount that it's going to, you are going to see some funding report submissions. So ensuring that they're aligned drawdowns, and then also progress updates. So based on your plan and how you're utilizing these grant funds, what is the progress? What are the adjustments that you are making along the way? As I mentioned before, there is going to be 2 pathways that are going to be available for this grant. So as you're engaging in the application process, as you're engaging in this self-assessment, you're going to identify some focus areas that you want to focus on. At that time, you're going to look to see what are the vetted improvement programs that are aligned to the focus areas that I have identified. In that, you're going to identify between one of 2 pathways to pursue. Pathway 1 is a partnership with an education service center, an ESC, utilizing one of their vetted improvement programs, or VIPs, as we call them. Pathway 2 is partnership with an external vetted improvement program, or VIP. In some cases, a campus might identify that they are going to focus on 2 different focus areas, and it is allowable to pursue both pathways for one campus. One thing to keep in mind would be any financial constraints in regards to what's available to you in the grant, and your ability to, if you only wanted to use the money for this particular grant, is that really a viable option once you start to look at costs? So that you're really going to be looking at, what is your focus area? What are the vetted improvement programs that are available? Are they through an education service center? If they are, you're going to go pathway 1. If you're interested in pursuing a vetted improvement program that's an external provider, then you're going to be pursuing pathway 2. Let's dig in a little deeper into pathway 1. One vetted improvement program that is available at all 20 education service centers is TIL, or Texas Instructional Leadership. When we post these slides for you, you will have access to this link and you will be able to learn more about Texas Instructional Leadership. And while it looks like it's one single vetted improvement program, it actually provides and addresses several areas within the ESF framework. So you will see that it has observation and feedback, it has data-driven instructions, and those are all separate cohorts that all fall within the umbrella of Texas Instructional Leadership. All of those kind of training cohorts are all vetted improvement programs. And so you can read more around Texas Instructional Leadership and kind of if you're interested in pursuing that Pathway 1, because that vetted improvement program is available at all 20 service centers. The other ESC vetted improvement program that's available is PBIS, and that is specific to Region 2. And so that is something that is also available because it is a VIP, but that is limited to one particular region that can provide that support. Looking at Pathway 2, that is the external vetted improvement programs. If you click on this link, this is actually going to take you to the ESF, texasesf.org, and it's going to include a chart. And this is going to reflect the alignment to the essential actions and the levers within the ESF and those vetted programs that are available under each one of the essential actions. And so you'll not only see Texas Instructional Leadership and PBIS, kind of the ESC VIPs, you're also going to see other external providers that have gone through the rigorous vetting process of being able to have that level of identification. And so some of the requirements here that would be similar to what we saw with ESCs, where they're doing kind of the whole group professional development, implementation support, and the coaching, you're going to see a lot of those same requirements, but it's going to be coming from an external entity. So you're going to see still that training, that professional development, on-site observation and feedback, direct coaching, and implementation of VIB practices. All of these vetted improvement programs coming from external providers look very different. And so each district, each campus will need to go and look to see of each one of the pathways. So for ESCs and for external VIPs, finding the one that's the right fit for you and your needs. As we get into kind of the funding, so I think we had a question in the chat around funding. Regardless of the pathway, the grant awards are going to range from $99,000 to $150,000 per campus. The reason why we wanted to provide you enough money within this grant opportunity to be able to engage in one of these vetted improvement programs, but we also wanted to make sure that we were able to spread this to as many campuses as we can. So the range would be $99,000 to $150,000 per campus, and we're hoping to award a range between 200 and 400 campuses so that we are able to support as many as possible. I want to touch on a little bit more around what are some of the costs. And because there are some varying costs, I wanted to just kind of take some time to talk through this. For Pathway 1, this is the ESC vetted improvement programs. The requirement is that the expenses that are aligned to this particular grant should tie back to the campus's ESF focus areas. And so when you're thinking about the allocation of money and the requirement to spend this money, it needs to go back and we should be able to see they've identified this particular need. Oh, they're pursuing this particular cohort at their service center because it's one of the vetted improvement programs that's aligned to that focus area. So the required expense would be for them to reach out to the service center to identify what the participation cost would be for that campus to be a part of one of the training cohorts under the Texas Instructional Leadership. And the pricing structure for each particular ESC just varies. We are a large state with 20 separate organizations that are that are providing this service. And so it is very important that the campus reach out and speak to somebody around their interest in the Texas instructional leadership. One thing to ensure that you're keeping in mind is that this is a 2-year grant. And so as you're asking for their pricing structure to get a clear picture of what that support looks like, making sure that you're thinking through, okay, this is what it's going to cost us this year. This is, you know, the people on our campus that are going to be involved in that level of coaching. We need to make sure that we are setting some money aside so that this level of support could happen for an additional year. And thinking through this as a 2-year process is what's going to make it more sustainable. We know that anytime that the participants are exposed to new learning, it takes a while for it to take hold. And so while the bulk of the learning is likely to happen in the first year, the second year really helps with being able to scale it across the campus and being able to ensure that it becomes kind of part of the culture and part of the way that that campus is kind of putting these systems in place. And so just making sure that when you're reaching out to your service center, that you're also having a conversation about what year 2 could look like. Same thing with pathway 2, but this would be actually reaching out to the contact that is listed on that external VIP chart on the texasesf.org. I would say there's even more variance from our external VIPs because their packages look very different from one another. It is going to be on the campus to ensure that they're giving themselves enough time to really engage in identifying what are the focus areas that we're pursuing. Let's narrow down our scope to identify which partners are we, or which programs are we most interested in, and then ensuring that you're setting the time aside to speak to them, to get the cost, the structure, to get a clear picture of what that support looks like, and to make sure that you are following up with them so that they know that you are interested in. We want to ensure that both our ESCs and our external vetted improvement programs have the time to plan for whatever interest they are seeing in the field in order for them to be ready to provide that support once these grants are awarded. This is also the requirement would be to ensure that the grant covers the training costs for these vetted improvement programs for a period of 2 years. I'm going to now turn it over to Alice, and I'm going to have her start talking through the application, and we'll use this time to also address some questions in the Q&A and in the chat.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks, Lizette. We're going to dive into what the application parts look like. I know when we hear the phrase LOI competition, sometimes that can be a bit confusing. So we'll review kind of at a high level what each of the application parts will look like. Application part 1 is a PDF. It's traditional part 1 PDF paper type grant, meaning that this grant is not located in the e-grant system. The LEA will complete each of these parts and submit electronically via email to the grants department. Part 1 offers narrative questions around specifically the LEA or district level support that will be needed for this grant. Those questions can include things like how the district will support the awarded campuses in carrying out school improvement activities, how the LEA or district will monitor campuses receiving this grant, how the LEA or district will modify as appropriate practices and policies to provide operational flexibility to the campuses, and how the budget will meet the needs and goals of the program. Application part 2, the budget workbook, is an Excel document and a very traditional part 2 Excel budget workbook. So you'll see that the budget object codes available will include 6100 payroll, 6200 professional and contracted services, 6300 supplies and materials, 6400 other operating costs. You'll see that we've highlighted budget object code 6200 in green. As discussed in the partnership conversation with VIPs, either at the ESC or external provider level, this will be where the district budgets those costs associated with that partnership. While LEAs are applying on behalf of Title I served campuses with a 2020 federal identification, this is an LEA level grant application, meaning that each applicant LEA or district will complete one Part 1 and one Part 2 of this budget and application parts. Negotiations for the budget will take place to adjust the budget based on the final number of awards awarded to each campus within the LEA. So for example, District A is applying on behalf of 5 campuses. If the award amount for each campus is $100,000, District A will complete budget 2 with a total of $500,000. If during the score and rank process, only 2 campuses in District A are awarded the grant, the negotiations process will take place to adjust Part 2 budget to a total of $200,000. There are also going to be required supplemental attachments as part of the application process. In Pathway 1, ESC supported VIP, each applicant campus will submit one attachment. So an LEA will submit one total attachment, one total Part A, Part 1, one total Part 2, XL, and then one supplemental attachment for each applicant campus. As we've said, if the campus has not conducted an ESF diagnostic, in order to complete the supplemental attachment, the campus will need to participate in an Effective Schools Framework self-assessment in order to have those identified prioritized focus areas from the ESF work. Questions on this supplemental attachment can include confirmation of support from the ESC VIP. We'll also be identifying the needs of the campus based on that ESF diagnostic or self-assessment, as well as barriers that are expected at the campus and action steps needed to be taken to overcome those barriers to support systemic change of school for school improvement. The supplemental attachment for Pathway 2 will look very similar to the supplemental pathway attachment for Pathway 1. Again, if the campus has not previously conducted an ESF diagnostic in the last 3 years, they will need to conduct an ESF self-assessment in order to identify those Effective Schools Framework prioritized focus areas. And that will also align to the pathway of the VIP chosen. And questions will be very similar. Confirmation of support from the external VIP, a description of those campus needs identified either by the diagnostic or the self-assessment, as well as a description of the barriers the campus needs and action steps to overcome them. So once a grant application is submitted and given an initial review, applications will go through a 3-step process to be scored and ranked. Step 1, TEA staff will review the written application and assign points for standard and specific criteria, which we'll review in just a moment. They'll hit stage gate 1, and any written application that receives 70% of the total points from the standard and specific review criteria will be assigned priority points. The final step will be to rank the applications based on the total number of points awarded, both from standard and specific criteria and priority points if eligible. So what are the standard criteria? These are the 3 big buckets we're looking for standard criteria. They will be a summary of program, goals and objectives, strategies, performance and evaluation, as well as a budget narrative. These areas that will be scored are on the application Part 1 PDF. And again, these are narrative responses centered around the LEA level supports for eligible campuses. Specific criteria will be found on the supplemental pathway attachments. In an effort to streamline the application process for LEAs, some of the questions on the supplemental attachments will include checkboxes with a few questions that are short narratives specific to the applicant campus, including a description of how the vetted improvement partner will build capacity, description of barriers to the ESF prioritized focus area or areas, and identification of action steps to address those barriers. Once we get through those standard and specific criteria points, applicants that receive 70% of total possible points awarded will have priority points added. Priority points included for this grant will be and can include, but not limited to, the longitudinal performance data and campus demographic data named here, specifically the 2019 Campus State Accountability Rating, percentage of the campus identified as economically disadvantaged, and the National Center for Educational Statistics campus defined as either rural, town, suburban, or city. So as Lizette mentioned, we are on a very accelerated timeline for this grant in order to be able to award announce in early fall, late summer. We needed to accelerate this grant process. So the TAA outlining these SI grant options went out in mid-February, February 11th. We are currently hosting the program grant launch webinar, this webinar now. And our anticipated project open date for this grant will be March 22nd, 2021. This project application window will open by posting on the Grants Opportunities webpage on that date. This will be a very short application window, only 30 days, with the application window closing on April 21st. The grant application will then be evaluated by Grants Administration team, as well as the program staff in the Division of School Improvement. And we're anticipating being able to make award announcements around July 8, 2021. We'll still need to do negotiations and some last minute items for these grant applications, and anticipate LEAs or districts receiving their notice of grant award in mid-September. Now that we've reviewed the application, I'm going to answer a few previously submitted FAQs. I know some of these have come through in the chat or Q&A. I'll address a few pages of these, and then if we need to answer any of these questions live, we'll start that process. So first up, can an LEA or campus that selects Pathway 1 ESC VIP opt to use an ESC that is not their home ESC? So LEAs that select Pathway 1, the Education Service Center supported vetted improvement program, will be required to work with their service region ESC VIP for Texas instructional leadership. If an LEA is selecting to participate in Pathway 1 and leverage the PBIS program out of ESC 2, that is allowable. Can LEAs reserve money to support central office personnel in attending TIL training, i.e. principal supervisors? The LEA will have the opportunity to reserve funds for central office personnel to attend TIL training if that staff member works directly with the awarded campus or a Title I served campus within one level of the direct feeder pattern of the awarded campus. Another FAQ, will the LEA be able to reserve funds to support direct feeder pattern campuses? Yes, LEAs will have the ability to reserve some of these grant funds to support Title I served campuses within one level of the direct feeder pattern of awarded campuses. So for example, if a Title I served targeted elementary receives this grant award, a Title I served middle school that the elementary feeds into may use some of these funds to participate in action items around continuous improvement in the Effective Schools framework. Next question is really around supplement versus supplant. If an LEA has paid for a VIP, either ESC-based or external, with other federal or local funds, is there a supplanting issue if the LEA is awarded the LOI competition grant and pays for VIP services with that funding? So the Title I Part A funds follow a different type of methodology for determining SNS supplement versus supplant. If an LEA has a valid methodology for distributing its state and local funds to campuses without regard to their Title I status, essentially in a Title I neutral manner, then they qualify for using this grant fund to support previously paid for costs at a VIP. Typically, we do not look at individual activities for SNS purposes. It's a global process for distribution of state and local funds. What if a campus is making PD, TIL plans based on funds and then does not receive them? Will there be any preliminary notifications of awards? So at this point, the Division of School Improvement will not be able to send out preliminary notifications. The earliest notification date that we will be able to provide to LEAs and campuses is that early July date. We're anticipating July 8th that campuses or LEAs have been awarded this ESF Focus Support Grant. This question also came through in the chat I saw. Can campuses with a federal identification, comprehensive support and improvement, targeted support and improvement, and additional targeted support and improvement that are not Title I served apply for this grant? Because this grant is funded with Title I Part A funds, the campus awarded must be Title I served and have that 2020 federal identification in order to be eligible. So we've come to the end of our overview. I'm going to pause here and check in on chat. Lizette, do you have anything you'd like to jump in and answer just right away?
Yeah, and I think that everyone can see the questions that have been coming in, but I think you just talked about who is eligible. So Title I served, as well as those that were comprehensive, targeted, or additional targeted. So I think that was a question that's been coming up quite a bit. The other one is for a district to do a single application, how many campuses could they apply for? As long as a campus in your district falls within the eligible category, then you can submit an application for them. And so, you could have a district that had, 10 eligible campuses. And if all 10 of those campuses are awarded this grant, that NOGA would come in for the total amount of all of those campus grants kind of combined. And then the district would be the one that would allocate their particular campus allotment to each one of those campuses. So as long as a campus is eligible, they are able to apply. Because the universe of this, of who is eligible is larger, that's why we're being very mindful of the money and the number of grant awards. So we're hoping to have anywhere between 200 and 400 campuses awarded, anywhere between kind of 100,000 to 150 or 99,000 to 150,000. And so we are trying to make this money stretch across as many campuses as we can. And I would just, it is a 2-year grant, meaning this allocation needs to last you 2 years. And so when you think about planning for it, you need to be reaching out to an education service center or a vetted external program to identify what are the costs, ensuring that you're setting aside, okay, here's the cost for this campus or certain folks on this campus to engage in this training for this year. Here's the amount that we're going to need to hold for next year. That remaining amount can go to the other, things like supplies and materials, things like payroll. It can pay for some of that, the costs of having a grant contract. It might not cover the entire position, but you are able to use that. You are able to provide people with stipends to go through kind of these training programs. So every campus should have some money that they can allocate across other object codes that's going to be at their discretion. Alice, is there any others of these that you want to kind of touch on live as we're kind of continuing to address some of these?
Thanks, Lizette. It looks like you've captured quite a few of them.
Do you want to touch a little bit on the feeders? I think that's a question that would be good to cover. And then we did drop the list in the chat. If you want to know which vetted improvement programs are allowable, you can actually see that chart by clicking on the link that's in the chat.
Perfect. Yeah. So the direct feeder pattern kind of depends on how the district has leveled campuses. So I saw in here that there was a question about an intermediate campus. So if an elementary or primary campus feeds into an intermediate before a middle school, it's one level regardless of the title of the campus. So if the elementary feeds into an intermediate before a middle school, the intermediate campus is within one level of the elementary awarded campus and would be the eligible campus to receive funds. Correct. It is one level above and below the identified or awarded campus. So if a middle school is the awarded campus that was eligible for the application and applied and received the award, the middle school would receive the award and could potentially also support the high school that is also Title I served and the elementary school if it is also Title I served, if there is a 3-level district flow. The one level up and one level down is correct.
Alice, can you put the timeline slide back up and talk through the timeline? I think that would be helpful.
Absolutely. So we're sitting here mid-March at program grant launch webinar date. Our intention is that applications will be open and posted to the grant opportunities page on March 22nd. So application part 1, application part 2, as well as supplemental attachments will be posted at that date. There's a short 30-day window for the application. The application window will close on April 21st. Between April 21st and our projected award release announcement, July 8th, was when we will be doing our rank and scoring of applications to make those award determinations. At that July date, campuses will know that they have been awarded this grant, but LEAs can anticipate that they'll receive their notice of grant award or their NOGA around mid-September.
All right, I want to take a little bit of time talking through the role of the ESF self-assessment, the ESF diagnostic. So when the grant posts on March 22nd, it's going to have the application on there. In the application, you're going to find a link to the ESF self-assessment. This is really going to be for campuses who have never engaged in an ESF self-assessment before, campuses who have never had an ESF diagnostic. It is a way for you to kind of look to see what is the best kind of focus area for you all to pursue as you're identifying and identifying your needs and applying for a particular grant pathway. Since the vetted improvement programs are organized to identify which essential actions they can support, it's important for the campus to know what is their ESF aligned focus area. So that's the self-assessment that you're going to want to use, kind of those guiding questions to kind of help you narrow your focus. If your campus has already engaged in an ESF diagnostic, no need to use your ESF diagnostic report findings. If your campus was already in improvement, you likely already have a targeted improvement plan. Continue what you have already started, so you know there's no need to change your focus area. If you want to, you are able to do that as well. Maybe you had been focusing on ESF 1.1, and you want to say, oh, you know what? We actually want to start focusing on lever 5. We want to start focusing on data-driven instruction. This is an opportunity to make that switch, but you don't have to engage in the self-assessment again, since you already have your diagnostic report, because you were already a school that was engaging in the ESF, already had a targeted improvement plan. If you were a campus that was additional targeted or targeted, you might have also completed a self-assessment. But we know that the focus areas that for that requirement, it was a little bit more of like an optional needs assessment for our targeted and additional targeted campuses. That was something where the district was really monitoring kind of the needs assessment process for those campus. Their focus areas that the campus was using for improvement purposes were likely captured in their SIP, in their campus improvement plan, because those campuses were not required to have a TIP. And so if that campus did engage in the ESF diagnostic, you've already identified what you were focusing on, use that. There's no need to engage in it again. But if you have not ever kind of started to engage and get familiar with what are the essential actions of the Effective Schools Framework, we wanted you to have this opportunity because it will help you identify what you're applying for. If you are a campus then that is a grant recipient who has never had to engage in a diagnostic. So let me give you an example. You are a targeted campus and you are a C campus. That's the identification that you currently have. And you then get awarded this grant. As a grant recipient, you're going to begin to kind of engage in whatever vetted improvement program you're pursuing. And then in the spring of 2022, so next school year, next spring, you're going to have an opportunity to, as part of the grant requirement, you're going to engage in an ESF diagnostic. This ESF diagnostic should not be seen as an intervention requirement because it absolutely is not. It is a value add for your campus to know basically where you are. It's going to be able to identify what happened, what does the focus need to shift for the following year as you're planning for year 2 of this grant. It'll also provide you with kind of a sequencing when you're thinking about what comes next, what comes after this particular grant. And so that diagnostic report and that diagnostic process will be for that campus's leadership as just having more information for them to have successful planning for school year 22-23 and beyond. But if you've already had one, you do not have to engage in that process again. Like this is really, it is just an additional feature that's going to be provided to these grant recipients who have not had one before. The other thing I wanted to talk through a little bit more, because I saw several questions about the web-based improvement plan. So campuses that are in improvement, it's required by statute that you have a targeted improvement plan. So for our campuses that the Division of School Improvement have historically worked with have been campuses that were that had a state accountability rating of F or that had a comprehensive identification. Those campuses were required to develop a targeted improvement plan in addition to their campus improvement plan. And the targeted improvement plan was really the basis for the conversations and the progress updates that they, that they worked with their school improvement specialist. This particular grant is not tied to interventions. Therefore, there is not a requirement that a grant recipient develops a TIP. It is a requirement that there be some sort of improvement plan grant implementation plan that aligns with how you're actually going to be spending your money. What are the outcomes that you're wanting to see by engaging with the vetted improvement program? And so we partnered with 806 Technology, which many of you probably know as Plan for Learning. And we've been working with them over the past 2 years to move kind of our action plans. So for school improvement, it had been their target improvement plan into a web-based plan that because they had such a large concentration of campuses and districts already using their Plan for Learning plans for their Title I plan. And so we're going to actually roll that in as kind of like this additional benefit, is that the grant implementation plan can be the web-based plan. It will also be able to kind of incorporate a lot of what you all might already have in your campus improvement plan as a way to better track the progress that you're making. But I think the biggest distinction that I want to kind of call out is this: you shouldn't see this as a targeted improvement plan, because this work is not statutorily driven. But it is, for those that have been in improvement, it's going to have a lot of the features that you've seen in your plans already, whether you were already piloting our web-based plan or you were kind of you were doing a paper-based targeted improvement plan. We're going to ask the grant recipients to plan in 90-day cycles. What are you hoping to accomplish in these 90 days? Great. As you're planning for the next 90 days, how did you do? What progress did you make? So that you're actually getting additional support in the grant implementation and in progress, monitoring your own progress throughout the life cycle of this particular grant. Nicole, Alice, is there other, I think that we have several questions that all of these questions are going to be added to the FAQ. In regards to timing, we're recording this. As soon as this recording is available in Zoom, we will be pulling the recording, the PowerPoint. So for those of you that want access to the slides, you'll absolutely have access to the slides and the links that are included in them. And then the FAQ, which was, I would say, a skinny FAQ prior to this webinar, will be much more robust, because we're going to be adding all of the questions that you have asked during this session, regardless of whether we were able to address them live or not. So we're going to be pulling from the Q&A, we're going to be pulling from the chat. I would say that we're going to try to get this up early next week, and because it's not likely that we'll be able to address all these questions by the end of today. Alice, is there, before you close us out with the contact slide, is there any others that you feel like you see lots of trends that you want to address live?
I think we've captured the big trends of questions at this point. Some of them will need some further deep dives, and I think we'll be able to capture those better in the FAQ.
Great. Can you take us to our last slide?
Absolutely. So just as a reminder, we will have a link for the FAQ. There is currently, as Lizette said, the skinny FAQ document located on the School Improvement LEA Grants webpage with a link below. And we will update that same site with the recording from today, the PowerPoint presentation as slide deck, as well as updated FAQs, probably early next week for the updated FAQs, as those might take a little bit more time to dig into. And then finally, just thank you. Thanks for joining. Thanks for being a part of this webinar this morning and joining us to kind of learn more about this opportunity for continuous improvement. Lizette, I'll let you officially close out.
Yeah, so SI division email is the best way to get in touch with us. With the way that this grant is structured, we have to, any question that comes to us has to be added to the FAQ. So just know that if you send us a question to that email, all of your friends across the state are also going to benefit from you asking that question, because we have to address it in the FAQ just to ensure that everyone's getting equal access to information as they are considering this particular grant opportunity. We know that some of you are on spring break. We know that some of you are planning for next week and a very well-deserved time off. So thank you for making the time to be a part of our webinar. And we hope that you all are able to take advantage of this opportunity so that we can partner with you in trying to get our schools feeling more supported with the challenges that we have ahead. Thank you all. Have a great Friday and a wonderful weekend. Bye-bye.